Hey, how you doing? What's up? What's shaking? Bacon.
Means of protest. And then you escalate in the policies that are being protested. And like I said, you do nothing but teach violence to your people all day, every day, in your media, in your music, in your movies, in your games, and in your whole approach to the world. Diplomacy doesn't work. Economic pressure doesn't work with you. Public opinion doesn't work with you. The law doesn't work with you. No legal means, no diplomatic means, no economic means, no popular means, no peaceful means can ever dislodge your fangs from the people of Gaza. Your entire system has systematically blocked every nonviolent path. You've made empathy a crime. You've made protest illegal. You've made justice unreachable. If you want peace, then stop blocking the path to peace. If you want nonviolence, then stop criminalizing nonviolence. If you want to stop the spread of hate, then stop building your empire on hate. You ban people from boycotting. You crack down on protests. You jail and deport protesters. You ignore international law. You dismiss the institutions of international law. Well, you're basically steering people towards violence. You punish all peaceful means of protest. And then you escalate in the policies that are being protested. And like I said, you do nothing but teach violence to your people all day, every day, in your media, in your music, in your movies.
So, what do you think, kids? What's shaking? There's one person there, one thumbs up. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to switch top chat to live chat. Let me do that right now. Let's see. Solar. Oh, I just emailed you, Solar. Did you get my little emails? I hope you did. Anybody want to get a hold of me, mano y mano? It's the dude awake 42 at Gmail, dude awake 42 at Gmail. Anybody wants to throw anything into the old PayPal? I think it's still working. The dude awake 42 at Gmail, right? So I've been very busy since September up until late April, right? And I've basically took care of all the things I had to take. My organizing skill is to find the right person to run the program, right? Not to run it myself. I mean, I will if I have to, but I don't, right? So that's all. And so all the little things all little plans I had for the community, all are working pretty good. And they are doing the main job I wanted them to do, not to give people food and clothes and services, which, yes, that's what we're doing. But I wanted everyone who is involved to experience empathy so they would no longer run their lives through a bias filter, right? And that's kind of working. And as a community, they're still, forget about it. Um, but we responded so well within the context of brotherly love. We have other church organizations all over the country coming to us, asking us to help them figure out how they can organize like we do. That's another thing I wanted to have happen. And I'm not making it happen. I'm not like facilitating it. I mean, I did in the beginning by example and by subtle manipulation of dynamics, but I never put myself in a position of telling people what to do or judging them. Right? And by being in very strange and almost dangerous situations and not being judgmental or biased, people are going, So anyway, that's all doing good. So and the weather started being really gorgeous. And so I decided to enjoy the gorgeousness because I'm about to have some pretty major surgeries done on me. And I mean, the odds are really good. The people who are doing it have their shit together. They have the protocols, they have the equipment. We have the technology, and I'm going to be like the $8 million man. But you know, the chaos is still going on. You have to realize Donald Trump is not the problem. Donald Trump is meaning the what is it when you get sick and you have symptoms? Biden. There's a little difference between Biden and Trump. Trump has been able to go after the universities in America because when you are developing a plutocrat, I mean, we already have a plutocratic state, right? The rich rule, and and then everyone's go, oh, he's a fascist. No, you haven't seen fascism, right? This isn't fascism. But what he's doing is he's breaking all the seeming norms that we felt seemingly protected us, and it didn't. It never has. America is not, the shining city on. It's none of the above. Now, one thing America may have is that within the construct, it's that movie about the newsroom and this guy who is like, the talking head. He's in a college, being interviewed, and there are all these liberal people going on about this, that, and the other thing. And someone says, "Well, why do they hate us and declare for our freedom?" And he goes, "Freedom? We have no freedom," And he goes on statistically showing that, you know, Norway, Sweden, all those they're free. England's free, kind of, And anyway, it goes on and on and on, and comparing all the things we don't have. I mean, we're the only industrial nation, one of the richest country on earth, and our Congress has just thrown us off the cliff economically. Moody's is downgraded us. Our bonds are through the roof. Interest rates. If you got a credit card, kids, ooh baby, ooh baby. So, it's just gonna get worse. Way, way, way. I mean, he is selling all of the attributes of the government to private ownership. And that's what happened with good old Bill Clinton. That's why our medical thing is so bad and why our banking is so bad is because Bill decontrolled everything and sold it to the highest bidder. So good luck with that. Now, no one wants to, all my liberal friends, I'm moving to Mexico. Oh, good luck with that. Talk about, violence.
Starring Tom Cruise, who plays the head of a secret government team that does what the CIA cannot do.
Yeah.
Summer of Soul. Hope you can join us. Fresh Air's executive producer is Danny Miller. For Terry Gross and Tanya Mosley, I'm David B. This is the lawmaker, Ayman Odeh. Lives and dignity, and there are many people who have come out in his support of the Palestinian people, showing that they are undeterred, that they're unbound, that they're and this Sunday marks 5 years since police murdered George Floyd. The video shocked the world and spurred a global movement for racial justice.
Now, we're going to be a lot, I have been involved in many, many, many social activist motifs, right? When we did the housing homesteading in New York City, taking over abandoned buildings that were owned by the state using the Homestead Act of 1876, and me being the master electrician, being able to put metered electricity to all those apartments. So when the marshals came, these people had electric bills, the gold standard of residency, right? But the cops would just kick the door in and beat the crap out of people anyway, And we tried to go to the courts, and they wouldn't even. You don't have standing, So the way we dealt with the violence of the state, I say basically the developers had redlined the Lower East Side because they were going to develop it at a later date. They just wanted to destroy it. And, that is exactly what Donald Trump is doing. He's redlining the whole United States. He's redlining the whole, neo global economic system, which was not really good for the poor, but it was at least not sustainable. You could at least live in it, right? What's coming down the thing? Not really. I mean, he's sending people without jurisprudence, without going to court. He's just chaining them up, putting them in orange suits, and taking them not to Gitmo, but to El Salvador, Chile, all these places that back in the 50s, the CIA basically destabilized and put creepy authoritarian oligarchs in there and basically killed millions of people on our nickel. Just like we've never stopped doing that, really since Christopher Columbus. Look what we did to the American Indians. 600 million native people killed since Christopher Columbus. It's on your spiritual nickel. What have you done? You know, have you written any letters? Have you, what books are you reading? Do you have a book club? Do you have a salon? You talk to your neighbor over the fence about any of this? I live in the most red Ku Klux Klan, Southern Baptist, wacko place, in the United States. And I speak like this to everyone, in Walmart's, waiting line, you name it. I talk to people, right? And I go, oh, let me look at your palm. And I give them a reading that goes straight into who they are. Now, I don't give everybody a reading, just people I can see that could use a little of my advice. And when I see people who are really worrying about things, I go, worrying is just a bad habit. It's not congenital. It's not mental. It's a habit. So stop it. I can't. So how do you stop a bad habit? You replace it with something better. So I say every time, and worry isn't like a light switch. Like, it kind of creeps up on you, right? But you can feel the first little fingers creeping up your back. And that's when you say, God, here, give me a hand here. I really don't have a clue what's going on. Please help me out. And you substitute the worry for that little prayer. Works every time. Anyway, so Democracy Now! Is a great show. I have a great WETS is my public radio station in Johnson City, about 50 miles away from me. And if I had money, I'd give it to him. I mean, when I had money, I used to give it to him, but I don't have money anymore. And that's fine. I mean, I did that on purpose, My brothers, you made your decisions, Anyway.
As he lay dying, Floyd gasped for air repeatedly. I can't breathe, he said. We know that George Floyd was.
And all of you aren't going to be able to breathe too soon because Donnie just signed an executive order basically to get rid of all of the EPA's benchmarks of air quality. And Congress has taken his presidential thing and made a law, copied, cut and paste. And so now that's something that can't be got. When Donnie was president the first time, he got rid of all those rules the EPA had, but then Biden got him and put him right back. Now Donnie did another executive order doing the same thing, but then his bitches, basically, in the midst of making the worst budget ever, it's going to put the United States into like $72 trillion worse debt than it is now. It's kind of like our debt right now is 70 something trillion dollars. In 10 years, if this thing gets through the Senate, like it got through Congress, it will basically double our debt. It'll be $142 trillion, starting next year. That's why I got rid of every nickel I had. I have nothing. And if they, come and get me and put me in an orange suit, I mean, all I'll be doing is talking to people like I talk now to get their head straight. Whether they're wearing an orange suit or the deadhead Bapalaga, the thing that you just look out your eyes. Anyway, so it's and this ain't nothing. Donald Trump is just a game show host, and and all my liberal friends are they're not doing anything. Just like the Democrats aren't doing anything, right? Because they're part of it. George Carlin, where is this man? George Carlin, 40 years ago said, kids, we don't live in a democracy. You don't have a choice for anything. The best you got is what color sprinkles you want on your donut. And Let's see. No, I don't want that. Where is this? Where is it? Here we go. Google that. George Carlin YouTubes. George Carlin YouTubes.
Now, this next piece of material is real simple. It's called Free Floating Hostility. 24 Now, this next piece of material is real simple. It's called Free Floating Hostility.
It's in 96.
24 minor cultural items I'm bored with, tired of, and pissed at. So I hope you're ready for random anger. People who make quote marks in the air with their fingers. Are you tired of these people yet? He said he was sober.
He said he was sober. It's an HBO special event. This show is for Sam. New York in the 70s.
Thank you. Thank you all.
And George deserved that.
Thank you all. Thank you. And hello, New York. Hello, New York, and thank you. Yeah. Okay. It's been a little while since I've been here, and a couple of things have happened in that time. I'd like to talk a little bit about the war in the Persian Gulf. Big doings in the Persian Gulf. You know my favorite part of that war? It's the first war we ever had that was on every channel plus cable. And the war got good ratings too, didn't it? Got good ratings. Well, we like war. We like war. We're a warlike people. We like war because we're good at it. You know why we're good at it? Because we get a lot of practice. This country's only 200 years old, and already we've had 10 major wars. We average a major war every 20 years in this country, so we're good at it. And it's a good thing we are. We're not very good at anything else anymore. Huh? Can't build a decent car. Can't make a TV set or a VCR worth the fuck. Got no steel industry left. Can't educate our young people. Can't get health care to our old people. But we can bomb the shit out of your country, all right?
And that's coming home, kids. They're going to be bombing your neighborhood. I mean, they already have been, you know. Try and get a mortgage. Forget about it, right? Your credit card debt, just the interest is more than you make in a week. Every month you have to pay a week's salary just to pay the interest on your credit card, just for emergencies. I have no credit. Zip, 0, right? I mean, I do. They actually call me up and say, you have tremendous credit. You know, you need a credit card. You know, we'll give you free cash for 6 months, and then we'll take everything you have away from you. You know, so I said, well, you know, Don't you want to buy stuff? I said, no, I got more stuff than. I mean, I had so much stuff. The radioactive rats came and started wearing my clothes, right? They didn't read my books. They ate my books, you know? So so get ready for that.
Unjustly killed by Minneapolis police officers. The video has gone viral. People are outraged. This is yet another reminder.
Close to 1,200 black folk have a George Floyd experience every year. A little more, a little less. The other interesting thing, close to 3,000 white people have a George Floyd experience every year. A little more, a little less, you know? And that number is going down because there are less and less white people. You know, the Hispanic folk and the Asian folk are starting to creep into that statistic. So, Amy, I love Amy, but
the Minneapolis Police Department has a culture of violence, specifically when it comes to their interactions with the African American community. This comes as Trump's Justice Department has just dismissed police reform and oversight agreements in Minneapolis and Louisville. We'll go to Minneapolis. And finally,
but those agreements aren't just for black people. It's like how they treat the public, not just black folk. Because I used to be a non-violence coordinator for police departments, right? And they were never that into being nonviolent because that's not how they're trained or even picked, right? I only got that job because of the housing authority that we built, and that the New York City Housing Authority wanted someone to reference that, right? So we did, and I got picked. No one else wanted to do it, so I did it, and pretty much I did everything I ever did in my life for a number of reasons. One, I go there to help the innocent, right? And I go there to create an exit strategy to get the innocent out of harm's way. Third is I get involved to learn something, right? To make things better. And fourth, if there's a pretty girl involved, I'm there, right? So that's been my motivation in my life, right? Help, fix, learn, pretty girl. And I would say, from my life experience, that's not a bad way to go. But the thing about Amy is that she always has this ideological thing going on.
starring Jean Theo Harris on her new book, King of the North, about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's own experiences with police brutality and his organizing against it in Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York that has gotten largely overlooked.
The other interesting thing, in 1969, I guess, or 70, when I stumbled into a great gig being a photojournalist at the High Point Enterprise in High Point, North Carolina. And so I was there for a good 9 months until I moved on, right? And what I really realized that, growing up in New York City, when I compared, High Point in New York City, taking apart, High Point probably had at that time maybe 100,000 people, and everything else around it was very rural farms, right? Tobacco, cotton, corn, hay, silage, and that was very much like Django, right? But High Point was the king of furniture, and those factories were unionized. So the black and white people were brothers, and they got paid the same thing. Every shift that would go out, they'd get in their car. Everybody was driving the same Buick. There was a Buick dealership for white people and a Buick dealership for black people, but it was the same car. Everybody was driving the same kind of. Anyway, it was very interesting to live there because everyone got along. As long as you kind of stayed in your place, everyone got along and everyone did very well and everyone was very comfortable. And the black folk, they had their own schools which were like 100 times better than the white schools that were in the same socioeconomic group, right? And so, because the black people knew that education was the key to getting out of the socioeconomic situation they were in. I mean, they were in a better one that their parents were in. I mean, they were doing pretty good as a union worker, and they had health care, and they had a nice house, and they had a nice car, and the kids going to a really good high school, and he's basketball or football or baseball star, and he's going off to college, and that was the American dream, but not the rest of North Carolina, and definitely not New York City or Washington D.C. or Philadelphia or Boston or any of those other places, right? So, what do you think is going on, right? How do you feel about, you know, what's? Oh, come on, stay in one place. Laptop. Fish sent me this little board that fits on my steering wheel, but with the car Jesus gave me, it doesn't fit. So anyway, then I misplaced it in the pile of stuff. The ever um, ambiguous, and it's like a null zone, and the only thing that could pull things out of the pile was the radioactive rats. And you go back to the shows that I showed you um, when I started nibbling away at the pile and trying to do spring cleaning. So I'm about 1/5 of going through all my stuff, and I've like slowed down a bit because having to have heart surgery in about 3 days and having to have my hip replaced in about, once my heart is strong enough that my hip doctor says, okay, you can go under the knife again. Oh, and that's some time. And John says, well, why don't we go take a trip? You don't have to go to the hospital. We'll take a trip. We'll be on the bar, blah, 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 blah. And, and that's like, it's like the problem of America is that people can't see what's really going on, right? So, anyone got anything to say? There's 3 of you there. 1 thumbs up. How about some thumbs up? How about subscribing? How about doing all that stuff that gets the algorithm more, pushing people this way? And again, anybody wants to get a hold of me, the dude awake 42 at Gmail. Anybody want to put anything on PayPal, the dude awake 42 at Gmail. Okay. Oh, what else is going on? Around here, the roads are still destroyed from the hurricane that occurred in September. September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. So that's 9 months, right? And the roads, what used to take me 10 minutes now takes me an hour. Right? And the road that I have to drive on has been destroyed by the conga trucks, right? So, and that's the corporate world. They're destroying the natural world, and trees are dying everywhere. And nature is really, not happy with what's going on. So all the trees are falling down in the roads. The corporate guys come and clean it out because that's where the rich people live. More trees fall down. It's like, okay, kids, you better open your eyes. As Jesus said, you have eyes to see, but you cannot see. You have ears to hear, but you do not hear. You don't listen to, your sensei Bob. You're just kind of, oh, tell us another story. Let's see a story. Yeah, 2 people split. They got tired of having to be brought to something that they might think about and maybe get involved. I mean, all the social activism that I've ever did was not driven by ideology. It was driven by relationships with people. And like again,
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In northern Gaza, more than 50 Palestinians were killed or presumed dead following an Israeli airstrike that leveled a 4-story home in Jabalia. Civil defense workers described a horrific scene with rescue operations severely hampered due to a lack of heavy machinery. The attack came as Gaza officials said at least 29 children and seniors starved to death over the past 2 days amidst a worsening hunger crisis brought on by Israel's near total blockade. On Thursday, there were chaotic scenes as crowds scrambled to receive the first freshly baked bread in weeks from a handful of bakeries in South and Central Gaza. Israel's army said it granted access Thursday to 107 humanitarian aid trucks carrying limited supplies of food, medical equipment, and pharmaceuticals. Aid groups say at least 500 aid trucks are needed every day for 2 months to alleviate Gaza's hunger crisis. This is UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric.
The shipment from yesterday is limited in quantity and nowhere near sufficient to meet the scale and scope of Gaza's 2.1 million.
Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam has condemned a series of Israeli attacks across southern Lebanon and the eastern Bekaa Valley. In more climate news, a new study from University of Maryland researchers finds the world's forests were destroyed at the fastest rate ever recorded last year, with an area the size of Italy lost to fires, as well as agriculture, logging, and mining. The Supreme Court has granted an emergency request by the Trump administration allowing the president to fire leaders of most independent government agencies. The Supreme Court 6-3 ruling clears the way for Trump to terminate National Labor Relations Board member Gwen Wilcox, as well as Kathy Harris, a member of the Merit Systems Protection Board, which protects the rights of federal workers.
You can see that this is a scripted modality, right? And Donald Trump is the game show host. What's behind door number 2, right? He is not a president. He's a game show host. Everything he does is scripted. You know, bringing the president of South Africa and showing that here's a picture of, all these white crosses. You killed thousands of white farmers. There's only 18,000 Africana farmers out there, and they own 80% of all the arable land, And, last year, something to the order of 28 white farmers were killed, and something to the order of 1,100 black farmers were killed. And the government hasn't taken any property away from, but Donald, showed his picture, and the picture of those crosses came from Rhodesia, right? And then there was a picture of all of these, lumps where people were buried, and that was taken from Ukraine or someplace. And it's like he lies so much, he tells the truth. And when I tell mega people, they get really upset. How dare you say that? I said, well, he's telling the truth, right? And he is, because all I have to do is hear what he's saying, turn it 180, and that's what's happening, right? And that is straight out of Orwell's 1984. It's called Newspeak. And when he says, that's fake news, that's newspeak, right? And it has been going on, before 1948, when 1984 was written. It has been going on since the printing press was invented, right? It's been going on since the Vatican basically made it illegal for the human race to read. And that's why we had the Dark Ages for 900 years. And that's where we're heading right now. Now, your Sensei Al Bob, he's going to be here as long as God wants him here. And that's fine by me, because it's worked out so far really good for me. I mean, I live, my Snap thing was kind of cut, and I have to, you can blah, 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 but you have to drive to state capitol to, appear to get your, $38 a month back. It's like, yeah, good. I had to pay 3 times that in gasoline, and I don't know if my car would make it back. So anyway, it's all fun and giggles, right? The fact that I've involved in starting one of the larger food banks around here, I have access to food. I have access to socks and a few other things. But I don't really, all that food, we have no really fresh food. We used to, but we don't have fresh food anymore. We just have, it says it right on the box or can, super processed food, meaning it's going to kill you. So I'm going to die soon. So, and I'm very creative with mixing and matching and turning something into something tasty. So, and there's still people who want me to do things. So they come, about once a week, somebody comes and takes me out to lunch and then has me go do something. I did that, I guess a couple of days ago. somebody, screwed around with something, and then nothing worked in this house anymore. And so this other person came and got me, took me out to lunch, and then took me over to this person's house. And I didn't bring a flashlight. I didn't really. And so this guy, he had a lamp, and he got glasses to see. So I kind of said, "So show me where." He said, "Well, a tree fell down on the wire, and then the wire. It was like something from the Three Stooges. The wire got pulled. Anyway, so the utility company came and righted the wire outside, but no one fooled around with the wire that got pulled on the inside of the house. So I just used Occam's razor, and in 3 minutes, bang, I fixed everything. Right. One thing that I couldn't fix, I got his phone to work, his lights to work, everything to work. One thing I couldn't get to work is his satellite because the tree fell on that satellite dish. I said, this is ancient technology. We just got the super duper fiber optic brought into your neighborhood, and there it is. Go sign up for it. And so I said, come on, move into today. Go get the fiber optics. Let's see what he does. But anyway, that's been the last 6 weeks. I've just been like nibbling away at the big pile, the big beautiful pile. That's death, right? And go back and maybe 10 shows, and there's a great image of King Larry, the radioactive rat, and the pile of death, right? Which is called consumer ism. So the only way this is going to be fixed is first it has to be fixed with you. Then it has to be fixed with the folk around you. Then you have to take that and make a community that's a good example of, and that's how we got unions. That's how we got healthcare that actually kind of worked, between 1890 to 1960, and the hiatus of when healthcare kind of worked for the American worker was between 42 and 62.
The ruling includes a narrow carve-out protecting the independence of the Federal Reserve. Earlier this month, Trump rattled markets when he mocked Fed Chair Jerome Powell as a... This is 1A.
That's my public radio.
Hi, I'm Nyla Boodoo. Today on the Roundup, we hear why Harvard's international students have been told to transfer or lose their legal status. Also this week, what's inside the mega bill just passed by the House? President Trump signs into law the Take It Down Act. In the Oval Office, it's more of a Turn the Lights Down Act. We'd love for you to weigh in. Our email is 1a@wamu.org. But we start here in D.C. and the charges brought against the suspect accused of gunning down 2 Israeli embassy staffers. That's all coming up after these.
You think that's a red flag or a black swan? So they can start arresting half the population for being anti-Semitic. I spent a good 10 years in the Hasidic community. My rabbi, I went to a Lubavitcher to become a rabbi. I would love to see somebody to call me, anti-Semitic. So it's
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Stocks opened lower this morning after President Trump threatened new tariffs on European imports and iPhones. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the Dow Jones Industrial Average sank about 340 points in early trading.
In what's become a familiar pattern, President Trump took to social media this morning with new tariffs.
And that's a familiar pattern, meaning he has buddies who are playing the market. He says something, it crashes, and they have sold all of their stock that's going to crash at the height. And so it crashes. They take a tenth of what they made and bought all the stock that's down to bottom, and they buy another 20% more. And then in a couple of days after he says, "Oh, I was just kidding," the stock goes back up, and they've made $250 million. Now the other guys who are putting puts on it, betting on whether the market's going to go down, they make even more money. So, and he's done it like 20 times already, and no one's. I mean, some people are talking about it.
Stress, sparking a sell-off in the stock
But these
market.
guys aren't.
Trump says trade talks with the European Union are going nowhere, so he's threatening to impose a 50% tax on imports from Europe starting next month. The president's also threatening to slap a 25% tax on iPhones unless Apple agrees to build the devices in the United States.
Which they can.
Smartphones and other electronics have so far gotten a pass in Trump's trade war. Stocks were already under pressure this week as the bond market recoiled from rising government debt. Higher bond yields lead to higher borrowing costs. Mortgage rates inched up this week to 6.86%.
There you go.
Scott Worthley, NPR News, Washington.
Harvard University is again suing the Trump administration. This follows the administration's decision to revoke the university's.
Again, he's just a game show host. He's doing all this stuff to break the norm. So the next person who comes in, and I bet you dollars to donuts, it's Hillary Clinton, because she is a piece of work. And that's the person to be scared of. Anyway, got any questions for me? There's two of you there, so come on. You got me. I may not be here too much longer, So, and I know that things are right because I'm having no problem going to sleep. I go to sleep as soon as it gets dark, and then really dark, which is about 9 o'clock. If I'm not doing something or talking to somebody, I basically go to sleep, and then I wake up as soon as the sun kind of gets the glow coming through the window. It's around 7 a.m. I kind of what it is, and then if I want to, I just turn my back to the window, and it's dark enough for me to go back to sleep, and I can get another 3 or 4 hours in. So I'm having no problem getting between 8 and 12 hours of sleep. Right? And then I'm up and about. The problem is when I try to really be active, it's when my legs and hips really, ooh, baby. So my mom, when she say, I got everything my parents have, and I should have been more. I pride myself on being a guy who's observant. I should have oh, this is what's happening to them. That's what's going to happen to me. I better take care of this and be more. But no, that's when I tripled down on the hedonist life and had a great time. And I was fine, And God kept saying, I said, is this a sin? And he said, of course, this is not a sin. The sin is when you basically take on that hedonism, that lifestyle as your God. And that's, so with that in mind, I was reading Job, and I realized why everything went the way it did with Job, because, Job was God's number one guy, always did all the right things and said all the right stuff and acted the right way. And God said, see how great Job is to the devil? And the devil said, give me a break. He's only doing that because look at all the stuff you've given him. No, take some of that away. Make his life hard. So it got harder and harder. And Job never, ever, he just said, why me? Oh, he never said, God, I don't understand what's going on. It's not my job to understand. My job is to ask you for help. Please help me out of this. Take the wheel. As soon as he did that, everything came back, and he got 3 times as what he had before. And that's the lesson. That is so Job's, false God was his suffering. That's why it got worse and worse, because he couldn't let go of his, it's all about me. Right? So I have all this, things wrong with my body, and they definitely have a physical representation. Like right now, my body's screaming in pain, right? But I'm not letting it bother me because I'm saying, God, take care of that. Help me out here. I'm doing this live show for you because I only come on because, well, man, you haven't done a show in like 3 days. Why don't you go out there and talk to the people? Because God told me, listen, it's not your job to convince anyone of anything. Your job is just to tell the story, right? That's what I do. I'm your griot, right? So anyone want to read my stuff, get a hold of me at the dudeawake42 at Gmail, and I can share it with you. I'd love to. What else?
Ability to enroll international students. The administration claims Harvard fosters anti-Semitism. Harvard alleges the Trump administration is retaliating against its right to use the First Amendment. 8 migrants deported from the U.S. who were supposed to go to South Sudan are now being held in the East African nation of Djibouti. They'll stay there for at least 2 weeks and comply with the U.S. court order. NPR's Jasmine Guards report.
Djibouti is an interesting country. It's one of the first countries in the last 10 years that said, listen, we're not going to continue being imperialized by the people who, destroyed us 100 years ago. We're not going to, forget the World Bank, forget the IMF, forget any of that stuff. We don't have any money. We're not going to borrow anymore. We're going to do our best to lift ourselves up. And they've been doing a really good job in the last 5 years. And the guy's president, Downey makes fun of him all the time, but he's one guy who has no imperial forces there stealing their resources, and he's not involved in any wars, and he is, and the rest of the South, Southern Hemisphere, is getting quick on this, and they are rejiggering the economy. And see, again, this isn't something that's organic. This is something that is being orchestrated, because we are going to have the big splat, the big beautiful splat, and it's going to take all the imperial forces down a peg and basically bring forth the South, which is like the poor people, up a peg. And then there's going to be a gigantic, like, civil war on the planet, and it will go watch the movie Zardos, right? And the rich people will live in these little domed things, and everyone else will live in their own slop, right? And that, I don't know if you were ever a big fan of Next Generation Star Trek with Picard. Their very first show was, Trouble at Firepoint, or whatever it was called. And, the Federation's expanding out, getting new, star systems to join, blah, blah, blah. And this is one group, and they're in a logistically important spot. So they've been given fast track, like to join NATO or the EU, right? It's the Federation. And what they're doing is there is this creature that can make anything, and they've like put a big chain around its neck, and so the Federation's really impressed with these guys that can build stuff like that, but it's this creature that's doing it. Anyway, Star Trek shows up, Picard shows up with the Enterprise D, and they go down and meet everyone, and they're nice. And then they said, well, the Federation will be here in a couple of days. We're the first, guys to just, the other diplomats came, and they're here, and everyone's getting on the same page. And we're going to take a look around the neighborhood. And that's when they bump into Q, and he knocks them over and meets the Borg. But while he's doing that, before he introduces them to the Borg, he basically, and the Borg is humanity's id, right? Prosperos, Shakespeare's, and it goes back to the first novel ever written by Mesopotamia. The first real printed thing is about this king that gets isolated on an island because he's a badass, but he's really smart. So they may need him some other time, so they don't kill him. And that became, a Shakespeare play, and then it became Forbidden Planet, my favorite, and Monsters from the Id, and that's where Israel is right now. Israel is suffering from monsters from its id. So, any questions? Hmm? 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 You know, you like me telling you stories. Well, we're in a time where you can write your own story, right? I've been involved, like I said, in a lot of social activism. And I told you my motivating factors and my guardrails. And every one of those things, people, why are you doing this? You're not getting paid. You're spending all this time, all this energy. My brother used to say it all the time. Why are you involved in the anti-nuclear movement? Why are you doing this? Blah, 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 blah. You should just make as much money as you can. Blah, 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 blah. And I said, what's that? Said, look at this big boat I bought. It cost me, $200,000, And I said, so who'd steal and get that money? So that's why he doesn't talk to me anymore, because I know him so well. When we start talking, I can tell what he's thinking and what he's feeling. He doesn't want to be reminded that he's actually a nice human being, because he is. He just, doubled down on being a cardboard cutout of my dad. He basically stole the business from everybody else and threw my parents under the bus. But they had all the money, and they forced him to pay for the business that if he had just been the dutiful son, he would have gotten. But no, anyway. So, and that's kind of where we're at. Everyone is so tweaked out about what's going on that they don't realize that this is a great opportunity not to make money, but to get a life that you love, to live, to love, to share, to be the we in me of the conscious intent of love's co-creation. It's up to you, right? It's up to you. Um, let's see what else we got here.
The White House has been complaining that courts are trying to control its foreign policy. The migrants are from Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, Cuba, and
Well, the short answer to your question is that effort isn't going anywhere in the Senate. The votes aren't there for it, but there's a reason why they did it other than just messaging. Pam Bondi, yes, she's the U.S. Attorney General. She was previously paid as a lobbyist for Qatar. And so they are asking for the investigation to try to understand a couple of things, like, did she provide the president personal and or government guidance that would actually create a path to circumvent the emoluments clause, which you would have thought would be the reason why immediately this gift couldn't happen. Okay. So I think there are a lot of really interesting elements here to the story, but one is this legal question: is it legal, and and what are the surrounding issues to that? But the other
is Medicaid. In effect, if you don't get a job, you have decided to cut your own Medicaid, and so they love the logic of that. They say it's a Bill Clinton idea from the 1990s, but it is going to save the federal government hundreds of billions of dollars through reduced spending on low-income Americans' health care.
I will say, in terms of, these requirements, the work requirements, the eligibility checks, these are extremely labor intensive paperwork.
And they
we
fired all
require
the
the
people in the
government
government.
government workers to be able to do that. It absolutely does. I can.
this is NPR.
You might be surprised to learn that a small contribution
began moving into Gaza. This comes after days of distribution delays and mounting international pressure. Leaders of the UK, France, and Canada condemned Israel's aid blockade and urged Israel to stop its military campaign and expansion in a statement on Monday. We're going to have more on that later, but aid has begun to reach Gaza's more than two suspended free trade talks with Israel on Tuesday and hit West Bank settlers with sanctions less than a day after vowing concrete actions if Israel didn't stop its new military offensive.
So why didn't Europe and the EU and these other people say this, back a year ago? They could have let Israel mow the lawn for about 3 or 4 months with support, but say, hey, buddy, why don't you put the lawnmower away?
Gaza. Separately, the EU foreign policy chief said the bloc was reviewing its EU-pact governing trade ties with Israel over its conduct on Friday. The Israeli
Again, this is a scripted dynamic that will rejigger the world view, right? Part of that worldview is going to be a all-in, tactical nuclear war in Europe, right? And one in Israel, and well, Mideast, right? Because Donnie's giving the Iranians no way out, and if they say we're not going to do what you want us to do, Israel is going to attack Iran with nuclear weapons. And just for fun, they will throw a few at the, Houthis and a few at who's ever left in the Gaza Strip and up there in Lebanon. And that will kind of kick off a war between India and Pakistan and China and Russia. So it's, and I would say, by September, this stuff will start popping off big time. Now, how do you stop that? How do you stop it? First of all, we need people on the street, but not, in a way that will force Donnie, because he's already got it set up to send in the army, which you're not supposed to, posse comitatus. He's already gotten rid of that because we're at war, because we have all these invaders from, south of the border. So it's going to be, only way this can stop is if everyone in America, not every, if 3% of the American white and upper middle class, Americans basically stopped buying stuff. Now, here's another thing I don't know if you've heard, that Amazon has already, not planned, already taken its corporate everything, its logistics, its finance, its technology, everything out of America and brought it to one of those Arab oil countries, right? Who have given them, you can be here for 20 years, you don't have to pay any taxes, and we'll pay for all the infrastructure you need, and we will pay for the 40,000 families you need to take from, Seattle to come here. And it's not like they're going to get rid of Amazon. They're going to turn Amazon warehouses totally robotic. They're going to turn all their deliveries totally robotic. Same thing with Walmart. Walmart said these tariffs, so we're going to, get rid. We're going totally digital. We are, going to get rid of, next to the American government. Walmart employs more Americans than anybody else, more than the car companies, more than the oil companies. So, and the healthcare is like, they're getting rid of, all the doctors are quitting, the nurses are leaving, they can't stand working in that environment. And so that's what you're looking at by the end of July. Because all this stuff is not like, we're going to do it. We're thinking about it. They've done it. Right? And again, this is a scripted thing. It's not, Amazon and Walmart, they aren't, they're a large corporation. So they belong to this cabal that wants to rejigger the whole friggin' planet into the Federation. Right? And, did you ever see Steven Spielberg's film Player One or something like that? It's maybe 5, 6, maybe 10 years ago. Everyone's wearing the video goggles. They're they're walking around garbage, but it looks really pretty through their goggles, and they're all living in 15-minute cities. Right? It was another interesting movie with I forget the guy who played the smart guy in The Boston Boys. I'll forget the name of the movie. Anyway, it's in the near future. He works in a factory, gets his, he's working on something. This machine grabs his arm and rips it off. And they still want him to work. If he doesn't work, he's no longer a legitimate citizen, and they kill him. Right? They throw him out of his little box, and he doesn't get any protein pills, and that's life, right? And so he tries to get up where the rich people are, which is, I think the movie was Solaris, maybe. Anyways, there's this place, up there in space, big space wheel that you can see from the ground. It's where all the rich people are. Everything is great. It's beautiful. It's like heaven. They have great medicine. Just sit in the machine and it heals you. So it's this, and this is all coming not like in 50 years or 100 years, but like by Christmas time. And that's why I live way out here, because there's nobody here, and they're not fixing these roads anytime soon. So they're gonna have to spend a lot of money to come and get me. Please, what challenge am I? If they showed up, I said, okay. So what's the plan? What are you offering me? How much am I going to get paid? What's my insurance? What's my retirement fund? I need a staff. I'm not driving a car. I want a really nice car. So because the bottom line is everything is made by God. Everything that we're being put through isn't like end times. Sorry, kids, that's not coming anytime soon. Not to mention that it's going to be worse than you could even imagine. And it's just the day to day. Go live in the Gaza Strip, go live in any one of 1,000 marginal communities in the United States that are right next to the radioactive rat dump, And if you haven't had a good life by now, good luck with that. Why do you think I did all the stuff I did when I was young, when I could actually travel the world and sleep in boxcars and enjoy it and have a good time with everything I did, no matter what I was doing, because I was doing it in consort with love's co-creation. That's why I survived, dying 7 times, because I was put here, as we all were, but we don't allow ourselves to get out of the box of the avatar of our ego, our id. And it's sad, So I know a lot of people, and I talk to them, and in these days they don't want to talk to me because I know them too well. And we start talking about life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and how they doing with that. And they're blah blah blah, president this blah blah blah, and it's like they're so terrible, blah blah blah. I said, so why are you involved? If you're not there to be the we in me, well, no, I'm the president. They need me. It's all about me. No, it's not. Your life is not about you. Sorry, kids. It's not about you. It's about the we in me. If you want to have a good life, you want to be happy, you want to really have some amazing experiences, that's what you do. And I keep bumping into people who know that organically, who do it, even though they live in most racist places, most stupidest places. They are living that. That's why I stay here, because the majority, like I was in church last Sunday, and yeah, everything, and the lady who gives the prayer to start off the ceremony, it was the most hate-filled thing. God help us get all the illegal aliens and kill them. God help us kill all the Arabs. God really. And I've had discussions with everyone. I said, is God really want us to do that? Is that really killing babies? Is that really what I don't say the whole congregation because they get upset. But if I talk to everybody one at a time when no one's watching, they've known me long enough to go, I should listen to Al. He actually says stuff that help me. And they do. And they're not stupid. They aren't the basket of deplorables. And I keep saying, guys, you got to work. And that's why we pulled through. That's why we had all the things we're doing because we did become a community and not all about me, So That's where we're at, right? And it's all about what you can do for your fellow man. You know, are you going to be the good or bad Samaritan, right? It'd be nice if you guys were saying something that we could have a discussion, because that's what this show is about. You know, let's see, 1 hour and 5 minutes. How much juice we got left? Maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes left. This may be my last show. You know, because I'm going to be in places after tomorrow that I won't really be able to go online. And once Tuesday rolls around, you know, I'm going to be in the hospital for a few days, and definitely not be doing this. So anyway, um, I'll probably do one more show, um, just to reach out to you guys, because to see if you really want to communicate. You know, if you really want to understand what your life is about, if you really want to be happy, or is your suffering, which is shallow and very self-centered, and you exist in that as your God, not love, because God is love, unconditional love. Jesus is unconditional forgiveness. Is your God that of judgment? Right? Are you the judge? You can never be the judge. It's not your job. Now, we all have opinions. Right? You can have an opinion, but you can't press that on anybody else. You can have an opinion, right? Now, the worst thing to do with your life is to go around with the lenses of having bias, right? That you believe that's reality. My bias is reality. Yeah, everything else is false. No, the only true is love, right? So let's see, what else can we find? Let's see. Let's try this.
It is not clear under what criteria they will give the aid. Let's remember, there was a period of time where there was a ceasefire, where Hamas and Israel had agreed to a ceasefire. What did we see during that period of time? We saw humanitarian aid flood into Gaza. We started to see schools reopening. We started to see hostages being released. Let's not forget there are still dozens of hostages in Gaza, whether they are alive or their remains. But we need to go back to that time of a ceasefire. We need to have Hamas and Israel find the political courage to make a deal to alleviate the suffering of the civilians.
And so just one more question, if you don't mind. We have the news coming on this evening about a group of diplomats being escorted around the West Bank and Hebron, and the Israeli forces firing warning shots at them. What's your reaction to that?
We were alarmed at the reports of warning shots being fired at diplomats, which included a number of UN officials. Diplomats who are doing their work should never come under any fire or any violence. It is clear that it is responsibility
right. There's more,
of the Israeli
I don't know if I can say that without actually counting. If there's more white people, acknowledging it rather than asking to tear it down, and the black people, just don't have the vision and belief.
Well, they have the vision. It's just been beaten into another part of their consciousness.
Well, I mean, we do need to pump up a vision for it, because I understand how people can say, well, what are they going to do with it anyway? That's always the end result answer. And most, I guess, actually with this, I guess probably most of these people haven't even gone to that park. More the ones that did grow up here are bitter. And then
it's amazing
that are like, they're just trying to kill us all off because that pool is, next to the runoff of the toxic dump that was there. And this is another way that the white man's going to take us down.
And you can understand, see that there's a duality of that. it's not that it's not happening. It is. They are doing that. You can see it, and wherever there's any toxic dump, that's where the poor and black people are, right? Or people of color, anyway. Not just black, but people of color. And so it's obvious that's what it is. That's what it does. That's how it works. That's what it is. But it only works because the people who are being oppressed by all of this basically say, "Oh, they're just trying to kill us," and they let themselves be killed. It's like, "Oh, it's a fait accompli. Why should I even try?" And that's where fun and art really come in, because these are two things that are in.
I'm thinking about the house that became the caretaker's cottage in Washington Park.
Yeah.
Been on my mind and heart as I've learned from descendants and elders who've been long working for civil rights and unity understanding. It's interesting and sad how humans forget what happened in the past directly affects the present and future. Many have been supporting the cottage rehab so it could have been underway while the new pool was being constructed. The former manager of Roanoke did approve a grant in 2024. The new mayor and manager have been learning about the last and why particularly good proposals by an expert contractor were not discussed and easily accepted. Last winter, no one with city wanted to discuss how to get the job done between councils. So citizens were asked to be patient and do more surveys again and research and interviews. Thank goodness the new council finally allowed the engineer in this year and an agreement made to pursue the current grant. I don't know why anyone would want to stir people up now against the dream for Gainsborough and Friends of Washington Park. The entrepreneurial spirit of those who first built Dreamland and Royal Gardens should be honored and the house celebrated. Of course, there is no need to be critical of good citizen work to bring families together for opportunities in the park. We are all in this together, and I mean no disrespect with my comments. I suppose now that the tension is there with the bright new pool, it is understandable that people see the house unsightly before rehabilitation. I wish the work had been done. It won't take long once started. Oh well, so goes politics and social change. People can so easily turn on each other and allow the sabotage rather than celebrate the good. It's a chaotic world, and more often than we'd like, the chaos and manipulators take over hearts and minds, and humans forget our deeper principles. We need to respect. I think I was disappointed that day. Somebody had started a post saying, "Wow, what do y'all think about the cottage? Did you know?" There was a leading question from this politician, and how the pool's half the size it could have been. Basically leading all the first comments like, "Yeah, tear it down. What's the point? What's the significance?"
Well, you just stated what the significance was. You just, you hit it out of the park. That was brilliant.
Well, I didn't even go into the history, actually, now that I'm reading it again. I just talked about the process of why it's not pretty like you want it to look right now.
But you did get in the reasons why it should be,
In other posts I did, yeah. Washington Park Caretaker's Cottage is to be rehabbed and become another community amenity alongside the pool and other developments to come. This is one of Roanoke's oldest parks where families of African descent were allowed to visit not only from Roanoke, but a safe place to travel for Black families from across Virginia and North Carolina. The history of reconciliation since has been very long and ongoing process of teaching, awareness, and understanding. As a gateway to the city, its importance should have been valued long ago, but now it is time to acknowledge what families and community leaders have been sharing with us for decades. The be a part of the evolution of social compassion and forward movement in Gainesboro and the Valley. We are all connected. The needs of Roanoke can be seen as a microcosm of the country. Working for change and learning from one another is doable at the local level. Waking people up and making decisions is possible. Conversations are good and vital. Participating in community is possible. Decades of long-awaited progress and requests to restore, to heal, and to thrive can be continuously activated with your help.
Well, that's brilliant.
I did that after the parade.
Do you get from that? What kind of response did you get from that?
Everybody's silent. I mean, I only had 18 people, but the other one, somebody, how did they respond? Well, I'll fix comments on that one. Let's see.
Why do you think people are silent?
Thanks, Holly, thanks for sharing. Y'all did good protecting that historic landmark. Glad it's moving forward. Positive. That's a great project. I'm in Winston-Salem and good in Black history and yada yada. Tell him about his project. Polly, keep the faith. Let your light shine. Somebody asking, did you create that art? Because I had a photograph of the painting of the cottage, and then I did a poster with the phrase artifact with the art by fact separated out. So that lady's like, I really appreciate what you wrote, and I learned a lot from your words. Thanks for letting us know about the history of the process. And then I told her about my appreciation of the bricks and the clay and the generations of people that have passed through. So it's been a little bit good conversation that I've had back. And I went to that lady's post that was stirring people up. I haven't gone back since, though. She was getting like hundreds at a time.
It
love
seems
to fight.
right. People who, if you get them, I mean, pretty much the algorithms in public media, social media, anger is gets more response than compassion. And they stoke it, meaning they move people towards that, right? But my whole take on the internet is that it's a big cloud, and the likes and the views are almost irrelevant.
Treated like kids saying we get this or this, as opposed to like where are the architectural and landscape designs of like 5 different represent diversity.
Anyway, so that's my artist friend and social activist, and that's why I stayed as long as I did in Roanoke, because Roanoke, just like this place, it's the microcosm of America, but it's a city, right? And so I used to get paid pretty well to look at specific social motifs and responses within the body politic of America. And I used to travel all over the country trying to check that out. And I did it for a good 12 years, but that's when I was an itinerant scholar. But I stumbled into Roanoke and realized, my God, this place is actually oh, okay. So Solaris, I got your email. I'll give you a call a little later. We can talk. Be like butter. Anyway, so there are a lot of interesting, like I said, it's a microcosm. So there's a zillion different types of people and things going on, and I put my finger in all those pies, and because I was getting paid, because there'd be a question about this group here, and I would go to that group that was in Roanoke, and I would get involved with them, and basically subtly, slowly bring forth the information that my client wanted to know about this XY group, not the people per se in Roanoke itself, but the people who are like this, you know. And they used to do these, you know, what do they call it when they ask you a question and they write down and then collate the numbers survey, right? And this is way more interesting because it's more like lab rats, right? You can put them, watch what their response is and facilitate understanding the question that's been asked by my client. So anyway, that's why I spent a good 20 years in Roanoke, and it was a beautiful place, and I kept stumbling into great um, real estate deals, and I really didn't have to do anything physically to make a pretty good yearly salary by facilitating understanding certain specific things, questions, social activism, blah blah blah, and bumping into good investments, and I'd have a little cash to buy low, sell high, and then I gave everything away to people who and organizations that kind of needed it. So that's what I did, and I took basically a vow of poverty, not to say that if someone were to if I were to win the lottery, I would you know cash that thing in and you know live a little you know less closer to the the vest, but I would have more money to invest into social activities and things of that nature. But anyway, it's pretty amazing that I've been able to fund and motivate and help lots of things in the last 6 years that I don't have a nickel for. Meaning, I just would put this person with that person and mix them up, and then ask the right question and have them think, and then have them think that they were the ones who thought of it and that it was there and they could take all the credit and pat themselves on the back, but it would actualize something really good in the community. And so that's my little skill set here, and others, fixing people's phones and stuff like that. Anyway, so um, what else is going on? Again, it'd be nice if some of you guys would ask some questions or have a conversation, just like my friend there, sweetie, right? So, and she was, a person who was, she still is a very well known and successful artist, and she just did that, just like my friend Kiki. She's like totally on top of the world in the art world, right? When we were together in New York as buds and co-collaborators and art party ringleaders. I mean, she came from a pretty wealthy family, so she never really had to worry about me. She stumbled into something or needed some money or whatever. She just had to make a phone call. Most people can't do that. And but she never did. She never reached out to. She had always had a job. She worked for me as an I told her I would be an electrician, and we did art together and did shows together and the thing is she kept at it for 20 something years, and if you keep at something for at least 10,000 hours you will be successful, right? Now if you really love what you're doing you'll even be that much more successful, because as an artist both of us had this, we had to do art. We weren't A-listers at that time, but we were doing art that people noticed because we kept doing it in very public places, and then we would get into shows, and then we started a thing called we, not just her and me, but about 8 other people started a thing called Collaborative Artist Projects, and we got our own two. We had 2 galleries, and I once that got started, again, that was something we put together our 501c3. I was pretty good at that. I worked at the one summer at the Smithsonian and at the Library of Congress, and my buddy worked doing research, right? So I just kind of hung out with him, and because I'm with him, I got to do my own little research in the Library of Congress. And the other reason I was there, Joseph Campbell was still teaching at whatever name of that college is. It's a kind of Christian Catholic, it starts with a J. They'll pop into my head. And anyway, I used to go to his lectures all the time. And then I started to go to his lectures for classes, and he would, assign. There were never tests. He just wanted to read. You know, he wrote stuff. So I would start writing stuff and handed it to him. And one day he said, you, Al, stay after class, the lecture room. Everyone kind of rolled out to go do something else. And he goes, who are you? I said, what do you mean? He goes, you're not on my list, and you write not like one of these kids. And you look like you're at least 5 to 10 years older. I said, I'm a little older than that. And he goes, I said, I work over at the Smithsonian. I really don't work over there. I have a friend who's a archivalist and a researcher. And he called me up and said, so I was his like AI, meaning I helped him do his job. He had a nice little apartment with another little room. I was involved in the Vietnam War was still going on, like in the 80s. And but they didn't call it the South, they didn't call it the Vietnam War. I mean, Vietnam won and America left, but we were in Cambodia, we were in Thailand, we were in lots of other places in that neighborhood, killing people and, destroying environments and stealing resources. And anyway, so I was part of this thing called the Grandma's Program, and we was the quilt, right? We were the quilters, and we made these quilts and made a chain around the Pentagon. And if you go to the Pentagon, it's on a piece of property. It's a beautiful park. There's all kinds of places have picnics and you name it. And we put a camp up, and me and a grandma's and a few other people, about 80 people. That was our little neighborhood. And me and the grandmas, we were making quilts that we were making a chain that we put around the whole Pentagon. And we would pray every morning when we'd wake up, every night when we go to sleep. We would do prayer and ceremony for peace. And we would cook all the time. And the smell of amazing grandma cooking would go into the Pentagon and they'd smell it instead of eating a cheese sandwich that was turning green out of the vending machine. People, what is that food? Where are you? And so within a few weeks of us doing that, pretty much the 28,000 people who worked at the Pentagon would come and have lunch with us, right? And we never asked for. All we had was donation buckets. And once it got working, it was great because everyone came to us. We couldn't get into the Pentagon, but they came and had meals with us, and we talked about everything, right? Because they wanted. A lot of those people just wanted to vent their heart on I don't know why I'm here, So we basically stayed there for almost a whole year. And my buddy, he realized I was there. He and I knew each other from University of Maryland, College Park, which was just up the road. And he says, "Oh, I got this gig. I think you'd really like it." So I kind of played I had my own little campsite, the Pentagon, but he had a nice house and a shower and a washing machine and all those good things. And he could get me into the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian, in the back room. So and then we go, listen to Joseph Campbell lecture, and that was one of the best summers I ever had. I mean, it was a whole year more than a summer, but I showed up early spring, maybe April, and I left before the New Year's, before it really got cold. And that was a great time because we accomplished so much because it was one of the periods of time where the United States wasn't into or having a mega war, right? And now they were doing sleazy stuff, Iran Contra and all the rest, but anyway. So it was so nice, looking at ancient things and talking, and then going to talk to Joseph. And I could just walk into, he had a period of time, and I could not understand that. He had his own, period of time where the students could come and talk to them. No one came. I never understood why. Meaning, when I was curriculum student, I would always go visit the teacher, and basically they give you an assignment. Within 2 days, I'd have an outline. These are the books I want to use. What do you think of this? I'd have these theoretical questions of what my thesis was going to be, and I would let the professor pick everything out and tell me exactly what he wanted and how. And I said, "So how you want it, right?" And then I'd make, within another 3 days, I'd take that rough outline and make it a real outline, almost like a written paper. And he or she would go through it and say, "This is great. This is bad. You should read this book." Now, we had 2 weeks to put together this paper. This is like day 6. And the rest of the people are out there getting drunk and going to parties. And I'm just basically, um, I'm not a young kid going to college. I'm at this college basically doing research for somebody else over there. But, oh, there's this interesting professor. Oh, there's this interesting lecture. Oh, there's this interesting this. And I would become part of the community, right? Of the university and the academy, right? And I would push that. And I'd always try to push my concept of the freely inquiring society. I want to start a sorority fraternity. Did you ever read the Harriet Experiment? I kind of wanted to do that with philosophic and intellectual ideas. And so let's see how we're doing for time. Oh yeah, we're almost out of here. So another 10 minutes of this. So I'll try and do a show tomorrow, and so I just kind of stumbled into that year of my life, and it was one of the better years of my life. And I try to make every year of whatever year I'm doing the best year of my life. So this last year, with the catastrophe of the event in September, was it was hard on my body. It was, but it was great on my spirit. That's why I'm in screaming pain right now, but it's not bothering me. Could you do that? Could you? Anyway, again, no one really wants to take part in the conversation. I've been around here 1 hour and 32 minutes here on a Friday, thinking that this would be something that people might want to jump in, especially you guys over in Europe, because you're home from work. It's like maybe 8 o'clock right now, and anyway. But it doesn't matter, because this show ain't about me. It's about the we in me, right? And again, you think things are weird now. Every day it gets weirder and weirder. And I'm like studying this all, right? And again, this is a TV game show, right? And Donnie is not our president. He is a game show host. And the ulterior motive is to get rid of any concept of norms. Anything goes. The next person who comes in, because I think what's going to happen is things are really going to start falling apart by August. I mean, seriously, right? People are, there won't be stuff on the shelves. Prices, everything be through the roof. It'll be very easily understood that it came from the tariffs, because that's what everyone's going to be telling us. And the war in Ukraine Russia will be pushed into a corner. They already are. And little Ukraine, it's a tenth of its size, tenth of its resources, is killing 5,000 Russians every week. Don't hold me to these numbers, but it's really surreal. And they are becoming a kick-ass military industrial complex all on themselves on the cheap. They're turning out weapons concepts, instead of taking 10 years and $1 trillion, they're turning this shit out in like 6 weeks, under like $24,000. So, and they are now in a way that their drones are imperceptible by Russia's air defense, Conversely, they have developed drones that have an 80% shoot down rate of whatever Russia shoots at its cities, right? So 80% is a lot better than their 40%, and they're getting better every week. So they aren't, they're urban areas and they're, resources, their water, electric, and all of that. It's been blown up, but not destroyed, right? And they're very good at bringing it back almost immediately. So people are having more of a life, and they are like rock solid with you. There may be things that get them upset about their government and their country, but they are, we are going to make this comment that we should do it this way, but we're not going to get upset about it. We're all as one to go get those Russians. And, so people don't understand that everyone's being played. All these wars, all these conflicts, this has all been manufactured. This has been scripted. And when I talk to my academic folk, who, well, I was a tenured professor and I get $1,200 a week, and a month. And I said, oh, that's cool. I was an itinerant scholar and, I get 800. So you get a few, that's it for me, 800. I have to pay certain, electric bill, insurance, this, that, and the other thing. My disposable income is $400 a month. Could you live on that? Meaning, and that is the disposable income is food. That's not the 400 that I have to pay. This is the 400. That's food. I see people when I'm in mine. I see people spending $600-700. They got 3 carts and one cart is full of Pepsi. They got like 1,100 cans of Pepsi in there. And I said, boy, you got a big party? Is this for the whole summer? Oh, no, that's just for the week. Anyway. It's in the red line yet? Almost the red line. No questions. There's two of you there. So DC was fun. DC in the that was the late 70s, early 80s was that period of the grandmas and me at the University of Maryland. And I guess it was later or earlier because yes, it was probably earlier. It's before Donna, so that's 77. So it was earlier, right? And the only other time I went to DC was when I was Rabbi Ratner. I studied with him in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, at his Hasidic Lubavitcher, right? Boy, do I have stories about that place and him and all of that. And so, yeah, I'm a Jew. I 100% a Jew, a Christian Jew. Right? I'm not a Zionist, though. Because that is a foreign element. Go look up the Khazarian mob, right? Go look up the Ananaski, right? And then look where the term Jew came from, right? The Jewish folk were on, after Exodus, they didn't listen to God, so they were out in the woods for, out in the desert for 40 years. And Moses didn't even get to go into the promised land. And they get there, Jerusalem, and all they do is like, I'm badass. God is our, where we got the covenant, and so they thought the covenant was an ark of the covenant, like a physical weapon, which it was, right? It came out of basically, this Old Testament, which is the Torah, and that's in Greek, Torah means you suck. Kabbalah, which is the esoteric hidden knowledge for the rich and powerful, then the occult. And that is the unknown, not unknown, but it's like the sacred sciences. That's what that is. And so, and that's what he wanted me to study. And that was right up my alley. And his ulterior motive was he wanted to always hook me up with these amazing Hasidic women who didn't have, who were still young, but who were focused on either the scripture, they wanted to be a rabbi, or they wanted to be this one woman. He hooked me up. She was going to be the first female cantor of Israel, right? And she came to study at Juilliard. And I had gone to Juilliard, but now I was older. And so he wanted me to, like, basically be the older brother or the older guy or the first man in her life who wasn't like Hasidic and big Coke bottle glasses and looked like a worm. And he thought that we could hook up and I could spread a little of the seed. And because whenever you went down Broadway and Roebling's in Williamsburg, the Hasidic women who looked this Zoptic, they look like Xena the warrior princess. All the Hasidic women were like, whoa, right? And they were hot and crazed and loads of fun and really smarter than the guys. The guys were just, adding machines. They just, anyway, they'd have these perambulators, and there'd be like 5 babies in them, and there'd be one, wormy, big glass Coke bottle boy, and then there'd be 3, young girl Xena princesses, and then there'd be this nice little Jewish Puerto Rican boy, brown skin. He's wearing his yarmulke like just on the side. He kind of looks like Sammy Davis Jr., but light skinned, and that's what he wanted me for, to be, And he kept hooking me up with girls, and I was too honorable, meaning I was there to like be their older brother, to protect them, to to guide them, and then take them out into the world and show them the real thing, what is going on, so they could bring a essence of realization of their own power back into the Hasidic community, which is what the rabbi wanted me to do. He couldn't do it, but he wanted to have happen because he's a smart guy. He was like one of the 3 most powerful rabbis in all of Judaism, Rabbi Ratner. I mean, he could go to Israel and tell anyone, any general, anybody in the Knesset what to do. I mean, he really had some juice. So I was, and not only was I in his, rabbi school, I was specifically studying the Kabbalah, not the everyday, Torah, not the, the workaday special Tamla, which is like for the high hippie holies of the sacrament. This other stuff that nobody wanted to touch except for guys like me. We the few. So we were the high caste folk. What was truly interesting in my group that studied, there were 4 women who were brilliant, just wow. And that was my cadre. The other guys were like, they wanted to play politics and become like Rabbi Ratner, and they really didn't have an understanding of any of this. They couldn't. It's like that scene out of Doctor Strange, when he's learning how to work the Sitchins, right? All those images and how they make doorways through this and that. Right? That's the Kabbalah. Those books that Doctor Strange got out of the library, that he just 5-fingered. Those were specifically Kabbalah books. So when I saw that movie, I said, whoa, because I had all these Sitchins, and a good deal of them were, see, the Hebrew, that's the everyday. The Kabbalah is this other thing. Whoa. Anyway, I think we're getting, we're down in the red range. So I got to say goodbye before the thing just dies and then gets unhappy that I didn't end the show. So come on back. I'll try and do another one around sometime between 11 and 1. I'll start and go on until 2 or 3 tomorrow. We'll see what happens. Okay? Okay.